Hello, everyone, and welcome to the virtual Gated Alley Program Pilot Community Meeting. This is Leah Swanson, a member of the Gated Alley team. We've opened the meeting 30 minutes early in order to resolve any audio issues with the speakers. If you're experiencing audio issues, please switch your audio connection to have WebEx call you. All attendees will remain muted until you're called on to speak at the conclusion of the presentation during the comment, question, and answer period. Please note the opening slide has information on how to access translation in Spanish format. All individuals speaking at the meeting tonight have registered at least 2 hours prior to the start of the meeting. If you did not register 2 hours prior to the meeting and you have a question that is not answered this evening, please email your question to gatedalley@phoenix.gov. We appreciate you taking the time to attend and hope you find the information valuable. I would like to introduce our first speaker, Sandra Hoffman, the City of Phoenix Planning and Development Assistant Director. Sandy?
Thank you very much, Leah. Appreciate everybody taking the time to be part of this meeting. We will be having a lot of different information. There's several different departments involved in this effort, so you're going to hear from Public Works, Neighborhood Services Department, and the Planning and Development Department. And the Police Department were also involved in helping to develop this expanded program. So we will be doing the presentation first, and then if there's the staff that Leah, who's mentioned that there's people that have registered to speak. There'll be an opportunity for those that registered to speak. Because there's so many that have asked to speak, there's at least I think 16 at this time, we were going to ask that you please limit your comments or questions to 2 minutes so that everybody has an opportunity to speak. There is a chat feature on this program, on the web event, that if you want to ask questions, you're more than welcome to complete the chat questions through that system. So with that, we will change to the next slide. Thank you. So in July, the Phoenix Mayor and Council approved expanding the Gapp pilot to include up to 10 alley segments in each council district and an allocation of $400,000 in funds to assist those located in low to moderate income census tracts to pay for the installation of the gates. In the photo on the screen, you can see a gate on the top right. That was one that was installed in the first phase of the Gated Alley pilot program in Royal Palm neighborhood, which is near Northern and 19th Avenue. And you can see again that there are some areas of the city that have been successful in installing the gates. Go to the next slide. So this slide shows you kind of a flow chart, a step-by-step to how to get your gates installed. And it provides guidance to owners and residents as they go through the Gated Alley pilot program. It's a quick overview. So I'm just going to kind of touch on some of these items, but there'll be a lot more information as the other departments present later on in this presentation. So one of the key steps is to identify one leader from your segment of the alley that's going to represent all the owners along there and the residents. And so that will help a lot to help coordinate things and working directly with the staff. Also, the next step on 2 is you need to obtain the support of the owners and the residents. Everybody should be informed about what you're hoping to do, and there'll be an application and a petition that will need to be completed, and we'll talk a little bit more about the petition. And we'll talk a little bit later too about it, but there's areas in the city that the census does, and there's a census that was going on just recently. Hopefully you responded to that. And with the data from the census information, they identified low to moderate income census tracts. And that is the areas that you're eligible to apply for funds. So that kind of shows the red box, and it's kind of an extra step, and we'll go through some more information regarding that later on. One of the key things is that a licensed contractor must be used to install the gates, and we do have a qualified vendor list. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And then the alley will be cleaned up, and we'll talk about that prior to that with neighborhoods, with the Public Works Department. Prior to the gates being installed. And then of course the owners and or residents are going to be responsible for maintenance. But once you get to the end there, then you'll get to the gates being installed. So Leah, go to the next slide, please. So what is an alley segment? Well, the highlighted yellowish colored goldenrod kind of color on the screen is showing you one alley segment. It looks kind of like a horseshoe or an upside down kind of horseshoe, I guess. And the idea is that the segment is the part of an alley that exists where the entrances come off of the right-of-way or a street. So there are some alleys with just two entrances, but and within the alley segments that have been selected by the council members, there are some that have three and a few that have four entrances. So it's important to know that because ideally you want to gate every entrance to control access to that alley. So, and when we talk about an alley segment, just so you understand, it's that part of that alley that's behind those residential properties that connect to a right-of-way or to a street. And if you received a letter, that means your alley was one of the ones selected by the council member to be eligible to apply for the Gated Alley Pilot Program. So the next slide is the details regarding the pilot requirements. So first, as I mentioned, a leader needs to be identified, and they should be part of a registered neighborhood group or a block watch group. Again, somebody that can represent those owners and residents as they bring in the application and we process it through to the final step. The alley space that's going to be gated cannot be used for any other uses because there are utilities in the alley areas and it's still city right-of-way. So we need to be able to have access through there. So you're not going to be able to build any additional walls internal to that alley or anything like that, but the ends would be gated. And again, you as the owner and the residents, as well as the city and utilities, will be able to access that alley because, again, there's times where the utilities certainly will need to go in there if they have to repair some kind of infrastructure. So the next picture, next slide, is, as I mentioned, there's no solid items that you can place in the alley, so no additional gates. And a revocable permit will be required. A revocable permit is required when you're doing any kind of work in the right-of-way. And I know it sounds confusing. Right-of-way is what people usually say is a street where you drive down your local neighborhood street and they have street names. But the alley is actually right-of-way as well. So the city owns that land that is the alley, and it will continue to be owned by the city. So it will still be considered right-of-way even though it's gated. So we asked for an amount, we'll talk about it a bit later, a revocable permit. It's going to be pretty much by each council district, and it's to cover that. And I believe it's about $100 total for your whole council district, and that is, considering there's so many different alley segments included, it's really not that much in comparison to what a normal revocable permit would cost if somebody was building something in the right-of-way. The other key thing is the gates must be transparent. We need to be able to view through it, especially if police are doing a patrol. They want to be able to look down through the alley to see if there is anybody that might be in there, again, doing something. And each of you will be given an access code so that, as Jesse Duarte in the Public Works Department will explain later, the gates will have a lock on each end and they will have a combination. So with that, I will turn it over to Jesse Duarte. He is with the Public Works Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. My name is Jesse Duarte. I'm a Deputy Director with the Public Works Department. One thing is, if you're accepted into the program, able to get your gates installed, prior, what's going to happen is your services, currently you have services in the alley with the large 300-gallon containers. Those services will be moved to the curb. So you will then get a 90-gallon container. It's going to be the same size container that you have for recycling, and it will be picked up on the same day as recycling container. The other thing that's bulk collection, if you currently have bulk collection in the alley, it will be also placed at the curb as well. So those are kind of things that we want to make sure you understand. The other thing is you still need to maintain your alley. Currently right now you have to maintain your alley from half of the alley towards your wall, back wall. You're going to have to continue to do that with weeds and any objects that are there as well. You want to go to the next slide? So this is what, when we look at the alley, this is what we've seen with some of the, we have some gates up where they keep it nice and clean. It's very visible. The gates are transparent. You can see through them, and the alleys stay pretty much clean. What happens when we do, and Sandy talked about that earlier, is that when we go through, when you're accepted, prior to us once we remove all the containers, before the gates go up, we're actually going to do a nice little clean sweep of the alley, clean it up nice and neat, make sure it looks good for when the gates come up. But the other thing is we want to make sure that you're aware that you have to continue to maintain these alleys once the gates do go up. Next slide. So let's talk about the gates. The gates are going to have to be wrought iron gates. There is a standard detail that we've already have out there for in order to build those gates. They need, again, said earlier, they need to be transparent, be able to see through them. We currently, right now, it has to be put up by a licensed contractor. We currently have 3 vendors on our list. You can get a licensed contractor yourself as well, but they need to make sure they stay within the standard guidelines, the details that we are proposing for these gates. Make sure when they do install, they have to have clearance for the utilities. And then what we're going to do in Public Works, we're going to provide each alley segment with a lock that will have a combination that each resident in that alley segment will have that combination for that lock. Next slide. The other thing that we want to do is what's the cost for this? Well, the city's responsibility is going to be for the local permit. I was able to say it this time. We'll cover that cost. And then the permit for the gates, usually it's $300 a gate, $600 total, and that's for relocating services. And then also the locks. The city will provide those locks as well. The residents' responsibility is going to be the gates themselves. Usually the gates are anywhere from $4,500 to $5,000, roughly around that area. And then you have to make sure you have a licensed contractor. And then the other thing, the other key issue or the key component for this is going to be you need to continue, you're the one going to be maintaining those gates. If something happens to those gates, the residents there are going to be responsible for the maintenance of those gates as well. And then also the maintenance, like I said earlier, in the alley between from the middle of the right of way to the middle of the alley to your wall. That's one of the key components because we need to make sure that those alleys stay clear for any emergency vehicles, police or fire, utilities, trucks going in there to make sure they need to take down a pole or wires down and make sure that we have access to get to those alleys. With that, I'll turn it over to Spencer Self from NSD.
Thank you, Jesse. That's right. My name is Spencer Self, and I am the Director of the Neighborhood Services Department. And to this point, you've heard the process to be eligible to get your gate. But I want to take a step back and say thank you to the Planning and Development Department and the Public Works Department who, again, to this point, you've heard it may sound simple, it may sound quick and easy, but there's been an immense amount of work that's gone into really trying to streamline this process from the first iteration of the pilot program to where we are now. And one of the things that we heard from the initial pilot was that there may be some neighborhoods who struggle to raise the funds to pay for those $5,000 gates. Even with the city absorbing a portion of that with the permits, that still is kind of a heavy lift for some departments, particularly those who may be in low or moderate income census tracts, as Sandy mentioned earlier. And so we created a grant program, and by we I mean the City Council allocated some funds to be used for this purpose, and that will be available for those who are in those low or moderate income census tracts. And if you're wondering at this point, how do I know if I'm in a low or moderate income census tract, there's really 2 ways. You can just give us a call in the Neighborhood Services Department at 602-534-4444, and I'll ask planning to enter that into the comment box so that you can see that. And it also will be on the slide later on in the presentation. Or you can go to phoenix.gov/gated alley. Again, that'll be provided. It's part of the presentation. And if you click on the program overview flyer at that link, it'll list some of this information, and there will be a link in there that you can go to that'll show the map of low-income census tracts. Or again, give us a call. If you are in a designated census tract, that doesn't guarantee that you will get funding, but it does help with the minimum qualification which you have to meet in order to get access to these particular grants. In addition to that, your application process will also evaluate incidents of crime, alley maintenance issues, homeless encampments and blight, description of what the neighborhood has been experiencing in the alley, the strength of your neighborhood association, and your dedication to maintain and clean the gate and alley. And so that speaks to what Jesse mentioned earlier. So let's go to the next slide, and we'll give you a look at what the application looks like. And you know, this isn't super clean, and I know it may be very hard to see on your screen, but it will be available on the website and through requesting an application at your request. So you'll notice that the first portion of the application is really trying to get information about you and your neighborhood organization. We really need a neighborhood leader to step up and say, I am taking the charge, and I will be the point person for the city to work with on this process. And so we'll ask for, again, neighborhood information and that primary contact information. And then if you go down a little bit lower on the presentation or on the application, you'll see neighborhood information. And the very first question is really, are you seeking city funding to assist in gating your alley? And so if you're in a low or moderate income census tract and you click yes, then we will put you into the process to evaluate whether or not you will be eligible for a grant or whether or not you will be awarded grant funds to install your gate. If no, then you can skip the next few questions because it won't be necessary, to evaluate your application as part of that grant process. All right, then later on it'll say gated alley program information, and then we get to specific questions about the section and area that you want gated, and that's really important for you to fill out so we know what alley segments you're talking about. All right, and then on the next slide, in addition to your application, there is a petition that needs to be filled out, and this is in particular important for two reasons. One, to make sure that your neighbors are all in support, or the majority, 50% plus one, are in support of gating your alley and relocating your solid waste if you are getting collection in the alley, whether that be the, going to curbside collection or the bulk trash pickup. I believe Jesse mentioned this, but Public Works will provide the bins for free, and all the property owners will still be responsible for keeping that alley clean. You've heard us mention that a few times. It really is important. This is a partnership, but the responsibility for the alley still maintains with the homeowners. And then public utilities must have 24-hour access if there are utilities in the section, and so they will also have keys or the ability to access the alley depending on what the locks are that are used. Let's go to the next slide. So let's talk about the timeline. This is moving incredibly quick. Again, we are really relying on the partnership with you, the neighborhood leaders, to step up and take the lead and get some consensus. I know a lot of you have been waiting a long time for this program. We're really excited to offer it. We know you're really excited to get it. Your city council members are also very excited to see this roll out. And so we're really hoping that we can jumpstart this very, very quickly. And we're hoping that the applications can be completed and submitted back to us by August 31st. Again, quick deadline, but it's so critical to make sure that we have consensus from all the neighbors to be able to move forward to the next step. And then when it comes to the grant, that September 1st through 10th, we will be reviewing, the committee will be reviewing those applications for eligibility and scoring for a potential grant. And with that, I will turn it back over to Sandy for the next few slides.
Great. Thank you, Spencer. So I want to clarify, we gave you some deadlines, but that is for the first review for those grants that might be available. So if you miss that deadline, please keep submitting your applications and your submittals to us because there'll be future phases of this. And so it isn't as if you missed that deadline, that's it. There's more. It's just we needed to break it up into different segments so staff could manage all the different things coming in. And if we could change the slide, one of the questions somebody put on the chat thing was, what constitutes supportive neighbors? Well, one of the things we're doing is we have a website available which has a lot of resources. It's going to have this presentation in it, so if you miss something or you're taking notes, don't worry, the presentation will be out there on that website for you to be able to look at and scroll through. It also will be including information on the history of the Gated Alley program, as well as an overview of the program program with a fact sheet and some videos of some of the alleys that were installed in the earlier first phase of the Gated Alley pilot program. So how are we supporting the neighbors and those that are interested is we've got the website that's available, and as well as the presentation we're doing tonight, we're going to provide a lot of other information of how to reach out to staff. If you don't know and you have questions, reach out to us by either the email that we're going to provide in a few minutes and or by phone, and we'll be happy to help and assist you and answer your questions and help you get through this system, because our goal is to try to get you to have those gates on your alleys. And so that's the intent behind it. And we will go to the next slide, which is resources. So what you can see are the resources, and as I mentioned, there's multiple departments involved, and if you call one department, we're all going to help you. It doesn't matter. You go, oh my gosh, which department does it? It doesn't matter. Just get a hold of one of us and we'll put you in the right place. So as I mentioned, Planning and Development Department, the Public Works Department, Neighborhood Services Department, as well as Phoenix Cares, which is the group that manages and helps work with the homeless. And so if there's homeless encampments that you have in your neighborhood, their contact information is there, because they're happy to help, and they'll come out and see what they can do to help work with that. So multiple departments are involved in this, and there's different roles, whether it's answering the emails that come in, or processing applications, or Public Works looking at how many people want to have their trash collection relocated from the alley to the front. All of those things, again, we will help you with, and we will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And the next slide is the advice, tips, and help. So this is the contact information. It has the web page on it. It has an email, which is gatedalley@phoenix.gov. If you have questions, you can submit it through the email. If you want to submit your application and your packet of information that's been filled out with your petitions, if you can attach it and send it through that email address, then staff will take it and we'll process it and we'll respond back to you that we've received it, and we're moving it forward through the system. And as Spencer mentioned, there is a phone number that anybody could call if you have questions related to the Gated Alley program. One of the questions on here was, do we have a list of the approved alleys? We do have lists, but to be honest, because there's 8 different council districts and there's 80 different alley segments, if you have a certain district area that you're interested in, just send us an email or give us a call, and we'll be happy to kind of walk you through the ones that were selected. Again, if you received a letter, you are one of the ones that was selected. It was a tough decision by the council office. Believe me, staff provided all kinds of information to help assist them, and many of them wanted to have additional alley segments. But because the way the council members made the vote in July, they were limited to a maximum of 10 alley segments. And if you did not get a letter, again, and your neighbors along the alley didn't get a letter, just in case there was a postal mix-up, if none of the neighbors did, then you're not part of this next phase of the Gated Alley pilot program. Now, again, we've been expanding it, so if you're interested, by all means, send an email to the gatedalley@phoenix.gov. And what we do is we will be putting you on a list of people that are interested, or neighbors that are interested, because that's one of the information items that we do provide to the council offices, so that in the future, when they, and if they, I'm assuming when, is expanded, then they'll have your information to know that you would like to be part of maybe the next phase. So you're welcome to do that. Again, but at this point, you're not able to fill out the application and the petition because once staff check, unless you're already, again, on the list that the council members selected, we're not going to be able to include you in this phase. So I think that's the only question I saw. And if we change the next slide, we're back to the steps again. Again, it's a step process, 1, 2, 3, onward from there. Staff will help you each step of the way, whether you're going to apply for the grant opportunity or you're not going to do that. If you choose not to do that, or you're not eligible, by all means, staff are here to answer your questions so that at the end, you do get to the end where you have that gate installed and it's there. One other question, I'm not sure if it was answered, was, well, what if I already have a gate from my backyard to the alley and I pull my boat in there or my trailer, or I want to have access with this big gate? Yes, you can continue to have that. You'll just have to open 2 gates. You'll open the gate at the entrance of the alley, and then you go on down and you go on into your own backyard. So one of the advantages of this program is that nothing solid can be constructed in there. So once the alley is gated, then you're still able to get access to your backyard area and be able to pull and use whatever you want to do to get into your gate that goes onto that alley. So hopefully that answers the question that was in the chat line. And with one more slide, Leah, thank you. So public comment time. So we're now going to turn it over I'm going to turn over to Leah because there are quite a few speakers that have registered. There's 16 of you. And so Leah will call your name and unmute you. And I'm going to just ask that if you could please limit your time to about 2 minutes, because with 16 people, you know, it'll be quite a while for us to be able to have an opportunity for everyone to say something. And then if you could still use the chat feature, please, if you have questions, we'll make sure we document those. And if we don't get a chance tonight to answer them, we'll make sure we put something out on the website to be able to get that info to you because of your interest and your concern. So with that, I will thank you very much, and we'll turn it over to Leah for me to let me know who is the person that's registered for speaking.
Thank you, Sandy. The first person that we have up tonight is Stan Bates. Stan, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and if you could please proceed with your question, your comment.
Hi, my name is Stan Bates. I am the chairman of the Cactus Wren Block Watch. Hi, Spencer. I appreciate everything you and NSD has always done for us. Same thing with Greg Gonzalez. You guys have been really supportive of our Block Watch. We appreciate it. My big question is, we have a couple of the areas that have been selected that are already getting their trash and their recycle picked up on the street, but they have their bulk trash picked up in the alley. There's been some concern about having the bulk trash put on the street because of the scavengers coming through the area and messing the trash up, and then that creating a problem for the neighbors on the street. Is there any way to change that portion?
Would you like me to answer that there? I'll go ahead and answer that for Public Works. Currently, right now, we have a lot throughout the city that's picked up at the curb. A lot of our bulk trash is picked up at the curb. So for us, the bulk trash wouldn't be out there very long. It's usually 2 weeks max. A week of advance, you can put it out in the week of collection. So it should not be out there very much. And if you do run into any issues like that, we have our code enforcement specialists that can go out there and make sure and see what's going on and see if they can stop that from happening. But we do collect the majority of the city, 80% of the city is collected at the curb.
Okay, thank you. That was the only question I had.
Thank you very much, Stan. The next question we have is Sylvia Polaris. Sylvia, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and if you could please state your name, property address, and your comments and questions. Go ahead, Sylvia.
Hi, my name is Sylvia, and I'm from the Sunny Slope neighborhood. My question was answered by one of the earlier slides where it's mentioned that all entrances would be closed off. So to mention that in the application, I know in our alley there's 3 openings, 2 main entrances, and then one in the back close to I think one of the shopping centers. So that was my question, and it was answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Our next question will be from Steve McWhirter. Steve, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your microphone. If you could please state your name, property address, and your comments and questions. Go ahead, Steve.
I'm Steve McWhirter, and I live at on East Winter Drive between 12th and 13th Street, which is just one block south of Northern. And my question is, we had full, all the neighbors on our East Winter Drive were all in favor of it. Didn't even give it a thought about on the other side of the alley is a strip mall that is, it basically runs from 12th to 13th. There's like one little area there, but that's a business. There's several different businesses in there, probably one owner of the whole building, but my guess is that they wouldn't be able to put their pickup trash at curbside because of the business. Is that probably more than likely going to be their comment back if I even ask? Or is there something else that the city could do differently for a business because you can't put it at the curbside?
This is Jesse Duarte again. We go out there and evaluate the area, but most businesses in those areas have collection in the front. They have to drive into the front of the street. Rarely they have it in the back, and usually they're metal containers that are serviced through those type of businesses. But we would go out there and evaluate the process to see where the gates would go and if it was feasible for the businesses to actually put everything toward the front of their businesses themselves.
Okay. Now that you say that, there is a big blue metal one that is on the very end. That might be outside of where the gate would be. I'd have to relook at that. But they do have their big trash containers on one end of the backside of in the alley, but it's on the backside very far in. So maybe there's a possibility. I'd have to relook at that.
Yeah, we would go and look at that areas of where the containers are located currently.
But would that be, if one building, would that be one person then, as far as getting 50%? If it's a owner of the whole building, would that be one person then, one entity?
Well, in most cases, a lot of those large shopping centers are managed by one property management, and that would be the only ones that we would contact.
Okay, because there's like, in that area, there's probably 6 or 7 different businesses in that, so.
And this is Sandra Hoffman with Planning and Development. You might want to look at, with the gated alleys in residential, the gates can block off the alley from pedestrians. So sometimes when you back onto commercial property, there is no way to really close it in. There's no fence along the one side of the alley. And so, that would be one of the challenges. And we had in one of the slides, again, if you're right next to a commercial development, and it's not easy to do. Now, we're open to looking at them if you were one of the selected alleys that got the letter, but it'd just be more of a challenge to control people going back there, transients and such, if there isn't already a fence on the opposite side of where the homes are. So just thinking about that, just putting a gate across might block vehicular traffic, but if people can walk around it, is how efficient would that be and successful in controlling? It would be something to think about.
Yeah, because they take deliveries back there. Now think about it, it's probably not going to be able to do it, I'm betting. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for your question. Next up, we have Tammy Kraus. Tammy, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your microphone. If you could please state your name, your property address, and your comments and questions. Go ahead, Tammy.
My name is Tammy Kraus. I live in the Bonnie Leah subdivision off of Campbell and 17th Avenue. And I actually put a couple questions into the chat, but I spend a lot of time cleaning up the alley. I haven't made a decision of whether or not I support or I'm against this proposition. My concerns are that people don't maintain the alleyway now. How are you going to enforce them keeping it clean? Because I'll tell you what, I'm the only one who cleans it on this section. I also want to know if it's 50+1 people to sign, then everybody needs to sign. I want to confirm if that's correct. And how are you going to collect the fees for putting up the gate, or is the neighborhood putting up the gate themselves off your vendor list?
This is Jesse Duarte. I can answer the first question for you. the dumping. For us, the gates go up. It makes it a lot easier for us to hold people accountable. With the gates not up, a lot of people can say it's illegal dumping or somebody coming through. But once the gates go up and we find things in it, because we'll still continue to go through those alleys to make sure that the alleys are clear. And if we find anything behind an alley or behind a resident's home, we will then contact that resident and hold them accountable for what's back there.
Yeah, that is a problem because I've taken pictures of my neighbors dumping stuff behind my fence. So, I mean, that's still a problem. It's nice to have the big trash cans back there so that you can dump the stuff in there rather than, talking to your neighbor. So.
Thank you, Tammy. I'm going to go to the next question.
Oh, hold on. I think Tammy had a couple of other questions about.
Oh, I'm sorry.
About the percentage
About the
and the
fees.
50 plus 1 and then the fees. So on the 50 plus 1, it's 50% plus 1 additional. So if you have 8 neighbors, it's a very, very small alley segment. That would be 4 plus 1 or 5. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, of course that makes sense. But how are you, so everybody has to sign then, right? So that you know that you got the 51, or you can just how are you verifying the people who are signing?
This is Sandra Hoffman. You want me to answer this, Spencer? Because we're basically, we hope you reach out to all of your 8 neighbors. But if you can only get 5 of them to sign that they do support it, then 5 is enough to submit your application to us because it's more than it's 50% plus 1 more. So you can still process it, and there is potential where you may have a couple neighbors that refuse to sign the petition, but as long as you get the amount 50% plus 1, you can submit your application. Does that help?
And Tammy, in case you're wondering, how do we know how many neighbors you have to be able to verify that percentage? We do have access to maps and property information, so we will be able to verify you do have 8 neighbors. So when you bring us the list of, let's say you only get 5 to sign and they all sign positive, we'll be able to count and make sure that that percentage matches up.
And make sure that those are 5 people actually did sign it, right? Those that the signatures are legitimate and they're done by the 5 residents who agreed to it, right?
Well, I'm not sure if we'll verify the actual signatures. What we will look at is to verify that that name does match the county assessor's record for who owns the property. So we will verify that it's an owner that signed it and not somebody else.
And that list will be available in public records of who signed?
I don't know. We'd have to check with our law department because we want to be thoughtful about, obviously, I guess if you're in that alley segment, you're going to know who your owners are. And again, the leader of the neighborhood organization and our block watch group would probably know, the people that live there. So I'd have to check with law whether we would, we would release all of that information just to be thoughtful about privacy of people, regarding that.
All right, and how are the fees collected?
Go ahead, Spencer.
Sure. So again, there are 2 paths where the neighborhood raises those funds themselves. And if that's the case, we wouldn't micromanage how the funding collection or, expenditures work. That's really where we will have from your application a key contact point that we'll be working with on the process. But if it's one person in your neighborhood who says, hey, I'll fund the whole thing, or if you need to collect from all those neighbors who are supportive, that's really up to the neighborhood how to do that. Now, if you're grant funded, then the grant would pick up the cost of the program and there would be no need to collect from individual neighbors.
One thing also to clarify is if you currently have trash collection in your alley, one of the slides said, that the Public Works Department would cover the cost of the permits and the locks. Well, that's only if trash is being relocated to the front of your home. If you don't have trash collection in the alley currently, your segment may be responsible and will be responsible for paying for the permits, which is for each one is $600 totally for the each segment end, actually, because there's a planning and development permit and a fire department permit. So you would be responsible for paying for that if you currently don't have trash collection in your alley. And again, it'd be up to the neighborhood leader to coordinate how that would be collected. And again, if you're in a low to moderate census tract and you apply, those funds, correct me if I'm wrong, Spencer, those funds from the grant, if you're awarded that, could help pay for the permits. Is that correct? If it's
Yes.
not, okay, thank you.
Yes, that's correct. And I'll also mention there is a third avenue that you can go down. The funds that we're using for this grant process came to us from the Neighborhood Block Watch program, which is a separate grant process that happens in the fall typically. And so we're off cycle for that, which is part of the reason we have this separate fund, and we have the low and moderate income requirement for the area, for the census tract. However, if you are interested in applying for a Block Watch grant through their process, this is an allowable expense for that Block Watch fund process.
And could you please repeat where we go to find if we are in a low to moderate income section?
Absolutely. So there's a couple different ways. One, again, you can call us at 602-534-4444, or you can go online to phoenix.gov/gatedalley, and there is a link on there for the program overview flyer, which has information about where to go to find the low moderate income census tract map.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, well, thank you. Leah, who would be the next person that's registered to speak?
Yes, so the next person that we have registered to speak is Chantel Wyke. Chantel, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you could please state your name, property address, and your comments and questions. Go ahead, Chantel.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chantel Wyke. I live at 6516 West Glen Rosa Avenue. And I actually have 3 questions, and I'm trying to be pretty quick. My first question is, can we partner with an organization for the application that is not listed in the link that was provided in the flyer? Could it be a neighborhood organization that's not specifically the Block Watch Association or neighborhood association, essentially?
So it's really critical, this is Spencer, for anyone who's called in, it is really critical that you have that listed neighborhood organization support. So they do need to be listed with the City of Phoenix Neighborhood Services Department, and they have to cover the area where the alley is located. If you have any questions or you want to work through that anymore, again, give us a call at the 602-534-4444, and we'll work with you on that neighborhood piece.
All right. Thank you, Spencer.
And then I think Chantel had a couple more questions.
Right.
Is the program funding for the 10 alley segments or 80 across all the districts?
So the grant funding, we have a total of $400,000 that has been allocated by the City Council. Our first tranche will be this $200,000 amount that you saw in the slide earlier. And this is for all of the segments for, again, what's been funded thus far. So it's not enough for us to be able to put a gate in every single alley, which is why it is a competitive application process. And you must be, again, in a low, moderate income census tract. So no, we won't have enough to fund all of them, though we wish we could. And so it is a competitive process.
So just to be clear, is it the $200,000 for the 10 alley segments? I think I saw 10 on that slide earlier, or is it across more than 10?
So it's certainly more than 10. I think at this point, most of the council districts have selected their initial, the the alley segments that are part of this pilot. And so any of those alley segments or those neighborhoods could submit for the grant at this time.
All right, thank you. And last, is the city going to give full funding if a neighborhood is approved for the grant, or are they considering partial funding?
Good question. At this time, we are hoping to fully fund the gates for the neighborhoods that are successful in their application process.
Okay, thank you so much. Oh, and another thing, I wanted to say thank you to Leah for providing me with information that was, past the normal working hours. So again, thank you, Leah.
You're welcome, Chantel. I'm glad I could help. Okay, our next caller is Serafina Loria. Serafina, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and please state your name, property address, and your comments and questions. Serafina, can you hear us? Okay, we're going to go ahead and go to our next caller. Our next caller is Karina Williams. Karina, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you could please state your name, your property address, and your comments and questions. Go ahead, Karina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karina, and I live in the area of 49th Avenue in Campbell. And all the questions have been answered. The only one I have is, how do we know if there's already a neighborhood leader in our area that's already begun the petition? If not, so that we can work on that. But if there's already someone doing it, then I'd like to join their cause.
Thank you, Karina. That is a great question. So again, the City of Phoenix has established neighborhood associations listed on our website. You can Google it, or you can just give us a call at, again, 602-534-4444, and we'll help you find out what neighborhood associations may be active in your area.
Okay, that works. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. Our next caller is Alyssa Huggins. Alyssa, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Please state your name, your property address, and your comments and questions. And I did see you had a question posed on the chat, so if you could just repeat it for everyone else. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Huggins, and I live in the Sunny Slope area, and I'm starting to feel kind of discouraged because I don't know if I have a community organization. I'm going to have to call 602-534-4444, is that right?
That is exactly right.
Okay, I've got to find out if I have a viable community organization. I live in the Cox neighborhood, so we might have something. I'm relatively new to the neighborhood, and I seem to be kind of the lead person on my street because most of my neighbors don't even have internet access, or they don't speak English. So I was the one going around, and I'm kind of panicky because I just got the letter like 4 days ago.
Let me ask you a quick question. Can you tell me either your address or maybe better cross streets and maybe
it's 1824 West Sunny Slope, and the cross street is, I'm right up on Sunny Slope between Dunlap and 19th. It's definitely a poor neighborhood, so I don't feel any qualms about whether I'd be available for the grant, but I feel like I've only got these 2 weeks in school. I teach school at the community college, and school starts Monday, so I'm having this crisis because I've got all these things I've got to do, and according to the chat line, it says I've got August 31st is just the first date, for applications, because that's what really got me, was how could you put this deadline on us for August 1st in the middle of a pandemic? And I'm going out to my neighbors when it's 115 degrees, asking them to consider this petition, standing out in the heat, and they can hardly, my neighbor's 94 years old, and I'm trying to tell him this is a good thing. And he's going, I can't understand what you're saying. So this is just not giving me enough time. And I really want this to happen. But if I've got time past August 31st, that helps a little. And I've got to find out if I have a neighborhood association, because we have to have a grant. We can't afford it. And I don't think we can even afford I don't think we could even afford the permits. So I don't know how this is going to happen for us, because we're so eligible for these grants.
All right. I want to help you out. So I believe you're in the West Sunny Slope Neighborhood Association and Block Watch, who have leaders like
West Sunny Slope. Okay.
West Sunny Slope Neighborhood Association and Block Watch.
Good.
With good leaders. We have Cleo and Leticia. So I think we'll be able to connect you to the right folks. Have hope, people.
That gives me a lot of hope, because as this conversation was proceeding, I was getting more and more discouraged, like, I don't think we're going to make it here, because I really want this to happen, and I just felt like all my hope was draining away. Okay, good. I'll call the number and get the necessary, because I want this to happen. I just felt like between the pandemic and the deadline, I didn't see it materializing. So, okay.
It is very fast, so thank you.
Really, how did it happen that all of a sudden we got this letter and then there was the deadline, and it's the pandemic? Even the motor vehicle department is giving me time, I feel like, why is it such a short deadline?
Spencer, Sandy, once the application's available, there will be a link on there to check your neighborhood association. It'll take you directly to the website to search for it.
That helps a lot, because I feel like that sounded really key, and that was a piece of information I didn't know about. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. We're going to move on to the next speaker, because we still have some more people we need to reach. So please try to keep your comments to 2 minutes. We're going to call on Alex Hotchman next. Alex, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and if you could please state your name, your property address, and your comments and questions. Go ahead, Alex.
Yes, hi, I'm Alex Crockman. I live in the Woodlawn Park neighborhood, and I have some intimate experience with both vagrancy and illegal dumping, having previously lived homeless in a city that has a major problem with homelessness and illegal dumping prior to purchasing my home here. And I'm afraid that from my boots on the ground experience, the program that the city is currently proposing is not going to accomplish what it's set out to accomplish. What it is instead going to do is upset the neighbors in our neighborhoods that don't get these gates, because we're not actually solving the vagrancy. We're not actually solving the dumping. We're just shoving it into somebody else's alley. If I were still homeless and I needed to dump a mattress and I'm walking down one of the alleys in the neighborhood that I currently live, one's got a gate, one doesn't, I'm just going to throw it down the one that doesn't have a gate. So the city really should be spending this money instead on homeless outreach, on ways to look at big item pickup to reduce the illegal dumping here, instead of just putting in this hostile architecture. So does the city have any plans to improve its homeless outreach or its large item pickup to compensate for this? Or, is there any technique that the city has got to have anything other than this?
Sandy, do you mind if I tackle this question?
Spencer. I was actually thinking it'd be perfect for you, Spencer.
So thank you. Alex, I really appreciate the question, and you touch on a lot of really important points, I think. And there's a couple of things that I would mention. One, right now the city is undergoing a really robust and comprehensive process to create a homeless strategies plan. where we're leading with services to really try to address the homeless situation. We also have a housing strategies plan as well. If you'd like any information about those plans, please go to phoenix.gov/homelesshelp. We have a survey that's active right now where it really goes through the plan that was proposed just before the summer break. You can view that plan, you can view the council meeting where we presented that plan, and fill out the survey, give us feedback about what you think we should include in that plan to help address the needs that you're seeing out in the community. The other thing, to your point about, okay, if we're putting a gate here, it's just going to upset other neighbors who don't have gates. There has been some research that's been done, and we met with a researcher with ASU that works a lot with our police department, who talked to us about some of the studies that have been done in other areas and provided us with some information that shows when you gate an alley or you do some of these activities that you would think would just disperse or relocate the activity, what you often find is that's not the case. There is a diminishing impact cumulatively over the entire system. So that is something we're interested in. It's also another reason why this is a pilot. We want to see what happens. We want to gather data from this process. If we're seeing a lot of, reports to our Phoenix Cares program about homelessness and activities that are happening in alleys, hopefully we'll see a difference, not just in the alley itself, but in adjacent alleys with this activity. Same thing when it comes to illegal dumping with our Public Works Department, graffiti potentially, all of these different impacts that we see in alleys. We're hoping that it doesn't just move it around or shuffle it, but that we have an overall significant impact.
Thank you, Spencer. I'm going to go ahead and call in the next speaker. We have a Gerardo Pellegrino. Pellegrina, I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. I have you unmuted, so Gerardo, if you could go ahead and state your name, your property address, and your comments and questions. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Gerardo Peregrina. People call me Jerry. Everybody knows me on the neighborhood. I've been around here for about 18 years now. And we own a couple houses down the street of 19th Drive from Maryland up to Tucky. And I'm a licensed contractor with the state. I hold 2 licenses, and I'm definitely interested in getting involved in getting the gates up, because we have all the equipment to build the gates that are needed. We've been doing this for years now. We do commercial work and residential work. Most of it's commercial. I think it's a great idea just because, I'll be honest with you, I have kids, and the needles, just the buildup of the transients in the alley. I always spend time back there driving my trailer through the alley, picking up mattresses. They make tents out there. It's just not good. And I've noticed that we were probably one of the people that call the police more than anybody else in the neighborhood. I don't know exactly who the leader is of our block watch. I know we do have one, which I'm going to find out who it is, so that we can hopefully, get this program, in line for at least our neighborhood. I don't know where else, but I would like to know how I can get on that vendor list of contractors, because I do have all the credentials that are needed to contract legally with the state.
Hi, Jerry. Thank you for your interest in becoming one of our contractors. Right now we have 3 that are on board the city can contract with, but we can expand that list. So if you could send an email to thegatedalley@phoenix.gov with some of your information, and we will get that information and we'll reach out to you and talk to you about how you might be able to get on the list as well.
Thank you very much, Jerry. I'm going to go to the next caller. I know it's 7:01, but we still have some callers that have registered for questions. So if you do have the time, I encourage you to stay on. We'll go a little bit longer and try to get as many questions answered as possible. If you could please just try to keep it to 2 minutes, and we'll try to get through some more of our attendees. Our next speaker is Julia Sayre. Julia, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you could state your name, property address, and comments. Go ahead, Julia.
Yeah, hello. I live near 10th Street and Butler, about a block north of there. Our alley is already approved, so I kind of had a maybe on if I had questions, depending on what I was hearing at the meeting this evening. It sounds like there are a lot more alleys that have been approved that haven't been turned in yet. Ours is one of the ones that's turned in. So we're just kind of waiting to, it seems like we turned it in a long, long time ago. How long does it take before the process of moving the trash to the front?
This is Jesse Duarte.
Has left the meeting.
For us, once it's everything approved and we start moving forward, it will take us probably a week to get those containers removed from the alley and then the other containers distributed to the residents. And then the other thing we need to do as well is once everything's out of there, once we start to get the gates, a week before the gates go up, we want to do a thorough cleaning of the alley before the gates go up. So it would take probably a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks max for us to get everything done.
This is Joe Giudice. I'm also with the Public Works Department, and I've turned my camera on to help jump in here. I think, if I'm listening to your question, are you in the Sunny Slope area? Letitia? Who was that?
Yes, Joe, she's on 10th Street and Butler.
Okay, so I think we got an application, but at that time, the residents had to come up with the funding for the gates, and I believe that you guys so far have not done that. I think what hopefully is new and maybe exciting for you is that you can now apply for a grant for those gates. And so I don't know if Spencer or Sandra can chime in on that, but I think that alley segment now would be eligible to apply for the grant so that you could proceed with gating where you've already gotten your neighborhoods to agree you would like to move the services. I don't think we've moved services for Public Works yet because we didn't get the green light from your neighborhood to proceed with that.
Okay, and this is Sandra Hoffman. Did you receive a letter just recently? Because that would mean that the council office selected it as part of the expanded program. If you were part of the original pilot program in Sunny Slope, there was a sort of a contiguous area that was included, and so we'd have to check to see if you didn't receive a letter. Technically, the council office may not have selected your one alley segment. And we'd have to verify that. So we're happy to reach out and try to look into that to see what happened. And then if you're eligible with this phase to apply for the funding, because it's at this point it's limited to the ones that got letters. So if you got a letter, then you are eligible to apply the application to Neighborhood Services Department for the funds. Does that help?
Thank you, Sandy. Sandy, I have Julia's email address, so I'm going to follow up with her and get her that information, and we'll make sure that her question is thoroughly answered. We're just going to move to the next person. If you want to hang with us, everyone, we've got Daniel Davis has a question, followed by Gloria Santa Cruz. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to Daniel Davis. Daniel, if you could please state your name, your property address, and your comments and questions. Go ahead,
Hi,
Daniel.
my name is Dan Davis. I live on Selden in Royal Palm Park. I'll be under 2 minutes. I just had a few comments, really. So I really think a lot of what's going on here is motivated by fear and prejudice against people experiencing homelessness that is unfounded. And I want that to be kind of, really stressed. The other things that this project does is displacing useful services like trash pickup in the alley, which we like having trash in the alley. It's stinky, it's nasty, put it in the alley, not our front yard. A lot of people use alleys to shorten their walking and their bike commutes. And personally, I do this, and the alleys in Royal Palm Park have limited my ability to walk in my neighborhood because it's lengthening my my walking. You know, I don't know what data Spencer was referring to earlier, but it would be wonderful if that was hosted on the website about how these gates might be beneficial for crime and what the actual quality of that data is. I would really like to know that if Spencer is able to give us that information. I know that the emergency responders are going to get keys to these alleys, but they still have to stop and open up the gate, and every second is important when an ambulance is responding. And these gates will delay emergency responders if they need to get into the alley. Plus, putting trash in the street removes parking. Parking is important. We like to have parking in front of our houses, and when we put trash in the street, we don't have parking. And for that nasty bulk trash, it's gross. We like it in the alley, and I think we should keep putting it in the alley. And you know what? Someone mentioned that this is not going to be that useful, that we really need to do something to really help our population of people experiencing homelessness, and that this is a waste of money. And I totally agree with that. And thank you guys for all you do, because I know working for the government isn't easy, and I appreciate you taking my comments. That's it.
Thank you so much, Dan. Leah, is there one more left then? Comment? Question?
Yes, we do have one more. That is Gloria Santa Cruz. Gloria, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you could please state your name, your property address, and your comments and questions. Go ahead, Gloria.
Hi, everybody. My name is Gloria Santa Cruz, and I live at around 20th Avenue in Maryland. So I think I'm Jerry's, Jerry, if you're still on the line, I think we're neighbors, so we should definitely talk. I actually, you know what, my question was answered earlier. I don't know if we have a person that leads our block watch or anything, and that's what I was wondering too, if, you know, there was a place I could go and check to see if the process has been started, because we did receive a letter, so I know we're eligible, and we've been here, gosh, over 20 years, and we've seen a lot of changes in the neighborhood, especially with the light rail coming in. You know, we've had people jump over our yard, we've had graffiti, so dumping in the alley, so we would definitely like to see this happen. I know it's not an answer to everything, but we think it would definitely help. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to mention out there that anyone who has attended by computer who can see the chat box, I did put in a link to where you can search for your neighborhood organization by address. So you just put your address in and it will show you what neighborhood association you may be part of, and you'll be able to find out who your neighborhood leaders are. That's just an alternative to calling us at 602-534-4444. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for participating in this. Information is on the website, which is at www.phoenix.gov/gated alley, and that's where you'll be able to see this presentation and the facts and a variety of other information. And also, as you can see on the screen, there is the email address that you can send questions to, which is the gated alley at phoenix.gov. And then there's been two phone numbers. One was in the presentation for you to call, which is the 602-534-8259, or Spencer's 602-534-4444. It'll get you straight to Neighborhood Services Department to help answer any questions you have. And so we do appreciate you taking the time. We're here to help you. That's the whole point with the whole presentation, is to let you know that staff are here. Reach out to us with any of your other questions that you may have, and we will certainly be glad to help you with that. I'm trying to see if there's anything else on the chat list there. With that, we thank you, and we hope you have a very good evening, and we'll be happy to help you again if you reach out to us. So thank you very much for taking your time. We appreciate it.